I'm Megan Armstrong, and this is the 6 Feet Above podcast. 6 Feet Above was created when I started to share my story of spending 16 years wanting to be 6 feet under to now living a life full and happy 6 feet above. The more I started to talk about it, my struggles, my past, the more I realized that people were genuinely interested and not judgmental at all, which is what I feared for so long. And in fact, other people wanted to talk about their story as well, and for some reason trusted me to do so. So the 6 Feet Above podcast is my way of helping to share other people's stories, finding out what works for them to create a life of happiness. Before we start this episode, I wanted to let you know that it has some explicit language and some very serious subject matter. It may be triggering or sensitive to certain people. Please listen with discretion. So this episode is just a little different. I will not be the only host, so stick around until the very end where my producer jumps in to ask Heath a few questions from a male perspective. This is Heath's story. I am excited to have another male on the show because I feel like women are more emotional and we're more vocal about it and sharing our feelings and sharing our past and our stories. And I think it's a little bit harder for men to do that. And I think it's just the way society has raised us. And I'm kind of excited to be breaking that barrier. And I have with me a very special guest. His name is Heath Ward. We've only known each other for a couple of months, but he's in the fitness community. And he's one of the best personal trainers in Atlanta, if I do say so myself. And he's got a great story. So I'm like, Heath, let's get you on. So hello.
Hello.
I'm excited to have you.
Excited to be here.
Give me a little background, what you're doing now, where you're from, you know.
Okay. What I'm doing now, I am a personal trainer, fitness coach, health coach, and entrepreneur.
Okay.
I live in Atlanta now, but I am from New England.
Yeah.
So if my Boston accent comes out a little bit, that's the reason why.
That's okay. I've got that upstate New York accent.
But yeah, so I love coaching, I love teaching, I love training, and I just love connecting people and just building healthy fitness communities here in Atlanta.
But fitness it's fairly newer for you.
Yes, it's fairly new for me. I've been doing it for about 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
I have like a ministry background and just like a corporate management background as well. But I've still been dealing with people for a living and for a long period of time.
A long time. So tell me about your ministry background, because yes, it's very different than fitness, but it's still that helping people, theme. So
Yeah.
what did you do in ministry? What does that actually mean?
So I worked at a big church in Atlanta.
Okay.
It's called North Point Ministries, and I was a high school groups director there. And so I was responsible for training, coaching, about 75 leaders, as well as, programming for high school students and pouring into the leaders as well as the students and things like that. So,
Okay.
and so our high school program on a weekly basis, we brought in like 250 kids plus
Oh, wow.
on a Sunday evening. And so we had camps, we had weekly programming, but my major job was to train and coach high school leaders to be able to effectively connect with high school students, when it comes to Christianity and just building foundational friendships and relationships in these formative high school years they go through, because a lot happens in those years.
A lot happens in those years.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And before that, you were in the corporate world?
Yep. So sales management, pretty much my whole entire life.
Okay.
Managing people, managing employees, that kind of thing. So
Okay.
marketing, sales.
So tell me about your transition from ministry full-time to fitness full-time. What did that look like? How long did it take? Because I think, obviously I have a theme here with all of my guests. They're in the fitness industry, but that's who I connect with.
Right.
It's not the most glamorous. It doesn't pay the most. It is something that you have to really desire to be in and enjoy to make it full-time. So, just for anyone out there that is interested in fitness, because we do talk a lot about it on the show, how did you make that transition, and who did you really rely on to support you in that?
Yeah, let me back up a little bit. So I was just working in corporate America about 5 or 6 years ago, and the reason why I got into fitness to begin with was because I had a high school student that was having a hard time. He recently broke up with his girlfriend, and the reason why is because his girlfriend said he was overweight and fat.
She said that to his face?
Yes, and so that broke my heart.
Yeah.
And he's like, Heath, can you help me? And I was like, of course.
Okay, so you were working full-time ministry.
So yeah, no, I was working.
You were corporate
at that time.
Got it.
And I've been in health and wellness my whole entire life.
Yeah.
Just having a sports background and things like that. I was like, yeah, of course I'll help you out. And so I helped him lose weight. And I was like, you know what? Well, might as well make something of it in terms of getting the certifications and things like that. And so I started not only training him, but other students that wanted to just, whether it's sports conditioning or sports training, to get them ready for the upcoming football season or baseball season or whatever it was. And then I by chance I just connected with some people through my relationships, and I started working at Elite Edge in the Chamblee area, and I was there for a couple of years, and I was still just working in corporate. And then I do a lot of volunteer work through my church as well, working with students and just Atlanta Mission and other different organizations in Atlanta. And the church that I was attending and serving with the high school ministry, they reached out to me and was like, hey, would you consider working full time for the church? And then I started working for the church, and I was still working in fitness. So I was at it for a long period of time. For about 2.5 years, I was working full time at a church and working part time, training, coaching, teaching classes here in Atlanta, coaching people, and it became just too much. And then so finally in March of this year, I left my full time gig at the church and went full time into fitness. And the transition has been pretty seamless because I already had a pretty strong network here with clients, and it was just a matter of just making myself more available. And it's it's been pretty seamless. But who I look to in terms of peers and mentor, I would say, like, one of my best friends is Fred Smith, and he's been in fitness for a while as well. So
Fred and I worked at Flywheel together when I
Really?
first moved here.
Okay, that's right.
That was like 6 years ago.
And so he's one of my good friends. So I kind of when I kind of told him, like, look, I'm looking to go full time in fitness, and the only reason why is because I just felt called to like go all in one of the two things, and I could still minister to people, be relational, and help people with their health and wellness physically, but as well as emotionally and spiritually, just as much as I could do working for a church.
I think that's what drew me to you, is like, yes, you're very in shape and you know what you're doing in the gym, but I think fitness is starting to kind of make this turn. For so long, it was like, let's post what we look like as a trainer with our shirts off and our sports bras. And it's like, It's not about us as trainers. It's about the clients and the friends and how we make them feel, and not just your time in the gym, but what you're doing outside of the gym, what you're eating, who you're hanging out with, what you're watching, what you're listening to. Like, it is all so comprehensive. And I think you get that. There aren't a lot of trainers that get that quite yet. They're like, hey, yep, here's your time. Here's what I'm going to charge you. We're in and we're out. Like, everyone that trains with you, they have a relationship with you.
Absolutely. So I pride myself in just investing in my clients. I want them. So my goal, is I want everyone around me, my sphere of influence, whether it's a client or a friend or a loved one, I want them to be healthy. Not just physically, but like mentally and spiritually as well.
Absolutely. Side note. So the kid that you helped lose weight, did his girlfriend get back together with him?
No. Because I wanted him to be healthy for himself.
That's amazing.
He moved on. He has another current girlfriend right now. He's at Georgia State right now, doing very well. He's keeping the weight off. He's good.
Very cool.
I have a great relationship with his family, so I check in with him every once in a while.
And it's like, if someone doesn't love you for who you are, no matter what weight you are, then they're not your one.
They're not your one.
That's okay. Move on. So let's back up. Yes, fitness is your current job, but you're an athlete just like I was. So I feel like fitness has been instilled in us since we were very young. We just worked out for a very different reason a long time ago, right? So you were a college football player, went to BC. And but you played in high school as well. What did you play in high school?
I was track, football, basketball in high school.
Okay.
Played a year in college. Academic demands, I was like, I can't do this anymore.
So
stopped playing football.
Yeah.
But yeah, sports has been a part of my life, my whole entire life, and just being competitive, but also, having that mindset of like just working hard and pushing yourself and everything.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask this just because I went through this when I stopped swimming and my career kind of went downhill. Mm-hmm. I struggled because I felt like I lost my identity I started when I was 3. I started competing when I was 5. I was swimming at nationals by the time I was 13. So my entire life was surrounded by being an athlete. Yeah. So I felt like when I was no longer swimming, who am I? What am I good at? Like, what do I matter? Am I valuable? Yeah. Did you ever go through that, or have you ever seen it with any of the athletes that you've trained?
Yes, absolutely. Most of my clients now and in the past have been like lifestyle athletes where they either played collegiately or they played sports at some part of their life, right. And where, whether it's an injury or whether it's, graduation or not panning out professionally, they have to like pivot, and figure things out, you know? And so that mindset of, wow, what do I have without competing and what do I have with sports is definitely there. And not just athletes though, but just like just regular lifestyle clients, they need to know like, hey, there's other avenues for you in order to compete or be healthy besides sports, and there's other ways to go about like life in general and finding purpose. Yeah. So I have conversations when I'm training with people to kind of find out a baseline of where they're at in terms of like their mental makeup, in terms of like, okay, are they content with where they're at? Mentally. Not mentally as well as physically. And like, what are you doing? What are the actual things you're doing in order to like maintain healthy relationships, have the right people around you? Right. And then the actual things like diet and health and all that stuff.
Are most people open to that? Like they want to talk about it, they trust you enough, or they kind of standoffish at first, get to know you, and then open up?
Some people are standoffish at first. Sometimes I get clients that are referrals from other friends where they're like, he's good at what he does, but he's not just a trainer like we were talking about earlier. Yeah. You should connect with him. And then so they're more like their guards down a little bit. But I feel like I have a gift of like, having people open up a little bit over the course of time, so I could learn more about them and I can help them.
I'd say you're right about the gift. I'd agree with that. That's why you're here. So now we're going to get real. So that was all just, fun and fluff, but no, really. We sat down, had coffee a couple of weeks ago, and this is, from looking from the outside, like no one knows what you went through. No one knows your story. No one understands why you are the way you are now until you start talking about it. And I am so incredibly proud that you're going to talk about this because we need to. Men need to, especially. You were abused growing up. Yeah. And that's hard. I feel like that's a hard thing for a guy just to say. Yeah. Much less have a conversation about. So let's back up. Your childhood, you're outside of Boston. Yeah. Your parents are married. But what's going on? Still married?
Still married, 40 plus years.
So what's going on between their relationship and then between what happened with you and your mom?
Oh, yeah. So my preteen years, my dad, he went through, he battled cancer. He went through a big-time cancer battle. And that was hard on our family because he was like, the only person working when he was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor some years ago. And it put a lot of pressure on my mom to kind of step up and work. And she just didn't handle it the best. And at that time, she wasn't diagnosed yet, but now she's been diagnosed as like bipolar depressive and depression, suffering from depression. And so I, as well as my sister, I have one sibling. She's like 11 months younger than me. We had to deal with a lot of physical and mental and emotional abuse from my mother during those years when my dad was battling cancer and he wasn't as present physically. As well as mentally, due to some of the stuff that happened after that with him. So she broke a little bit. She broke down a little bit, but also kind of we suffered the consequences of that. Yeah. Yeah.
So was that mostly probably from the stress? I mean, had any of that occurred before he had cancer?
No, some things you just don't know it's there until like it's a trigger, right? And so the trigger was, I have to provide for my family. I have to step up as essentially a single mom,
right,
and deal with the pressures of life, as well as do my best to provide for 2 kids.
Yeah.
When my husband can't
do it. Do you know if she experienced any of that growing up?
Yes. Part of this whole story is that through healing and restoration, to the present, like I've had plenty of conversations with my mom to kind of discover some things about her relationship with her mother and her parents when she was growing up, to the reasons why she is the way she is. Which
doesn't make it okay, but it's like, oh, now I get it. Now I know why you did that, because that's the way you were treated.
Right.
So did you find yourself kind of having to step up to be the man in the family, protect your sister?
Absolutely. So growing up, having to protect my sister, whether it's in the house or in school, they're listening to me right now, but I am a African-American male and I grew up in a predominantly, Caucasian white area, and it was hard growing up, especially our family dealing with some of the things we're dealing with. We kind of, it was financially tough.
Yeah.
And so we went from a certain status until it was really rough growing up.
So you had to move out of the house.
Yeah. So, we started off as like, upper middle class, and then it just, things changed once my dad went through what he went through, and my mom was just the sole provider. And so we had to deal with a lot. So just dealing with things at school, dealing with things in the house. It was really challenging in my preteen and teenage years when I was growing up in middle school and high school.
So that went on for several years with your mom?
Yeah.
Did anyone else know about it?
Oh, not really. My sister was protected to a certain extent because she was younger.
Right.
And my dad just wasn't as present. He didn't know what was going on.
Right. You never told like a counselor or teacher or anything?
No, the counselor. Who could afford a counselor?
Well, no, like a school counselor.
So I kept things under wraps, just kind of internalized a lot of things. And I believed a lot of truths about myself in those formative years, not knowing, anything other than that.
Anything different. Like,
anything different,
this is what I deserve, or this is just what happens.
Right, yeah. So it's a lot of my experiences growing up kind of helped me at that time. It kind of like, okay, this is how my self-worth and confidence and, self-esteem was all built off of all my experiences growing up,
right.
Especially when it comes to like dating and relationships and things like that with the opposite sex. And so that plays a role when I got older. So, yeah.
So what happened when you went to college? Obviously you go away to school, and when you come home, has the dichotomy changed? Your father got better at some
My father got better.
Okay.
But I didn't really want to go home, and my dad, he knew there was like a huge rift and divide between the relationship I had with my dad versus the relationship I had with my mother. And a couple of times I tried to explain it to him, but he just didn't understand. He didn't get it. And but I didn't really want to go home when I was in college.
Really?
Just because I just wanted to kind of distance myself from my mom as much as possible. And
he wasn't receptive to it, or didn't, like when you say mom did this to me growing up, or did you come out and say that?
I said at some point, like, Dad, how mom is, but I didn't deep dive into like some of the stuff I experienced, when I was younger.
Do you think it's because you didn't want to burden him with more than he had already dealt with?
I think that may be true.
Yeah.
Because my dad's been through a lot. Yeah. And I didn't want to burden him with any of that stuff.
I'm just gonna man up and deal with this myself.
Yeah. And it wasn't that. That's not something that was learned. Like, you don't talk about stuff. It's more so like I didn't want to burden my dad.
Whereas now, so we're talking 25 years ago, right, or around there. Nowadays, I feel like it would probably be more okay to talk about, because we are starting to talk about this stuff, but. I was telling my story, and it's like this started 20 some years ago. Like, it just wasn't talked about. So it's pretty interesting how far we've come in those amount of years, and the fact that, we can open up and have a candid conversation, and even with our parents now, candidly talk to them. And not to blame them or anything, but just to be like, hey, this is what was going on, and this is the way I am now, and this is why I'm my parents still haven't listened to my story in the first podcast. And
really?
Yeah. I talked to my mom, and I haven't even asked her why, because I know why.
Yeah.
Because I understand her, just like your dad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you understand him, and it's like, oh, okay. So you went to college, didn't really want to go home a whole lot. At what point did you kind of say, hey, I got to deal with this, because it was starting to affect you and your relationships with women?
I would say in my mid-20s, after like multiple failed relationships, and the common denominator is what I just gravitated towards females that didn't treat me right.
Okay.
And it was because of lack of self-worth. And it was, you know, I tried too hard in relationships because I wanted to be validated by women, you know, and in an unhealthy way, due to my experiences when I was younger, but I didn't connect those dots. And so it wasn't until I I moved to Atlanta in 2011, and I got super involved in my church. And I was in a community group with guys like Fred Smith and other people, where I really kind of deep dived into my faith, as well as like some of the inner root issues that I was having as a man, that I was unable to uncover some things.
I know that y'all have these small groups, and I know what goes on with girls, but like, do guys kind of open up and talk about this stuff?
I think men work better in numbers, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you get a group of people that are on the same page, they want to improve their lives, whether it's spiritually or just grow in their faith or whatever. If you find the right guys and we work well with numbers, I think we're more vulnerable, especially when we start sharing stories. So the way we do it, you share a little bit about your personal story, and when everyone's sharing, it's like, all right, everyone's guard is down. Right. And that's when people are more apt to open up and share things.
And more likely to do it around a group of guys versus a mixed group, men and women.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes
whenever
sense.
You have a group of guys, you put one female in there, it's a mess up everything.
I do want to rewind a little bit, because you did go through a hard time in your mid-late 20s with alcohol and
a lot of drinking,
the party scene
a little bit. It's just like, and it just wasn't me, and again, I was like struggling to find happiness and joy through the wrong, in the wrong way. So like I said, my faith has been a big piece of my life where it's kind of helped me get rooted in terms of like knowing my self-worth and knowing that I'm loved by God and things like that, without, even if I didn't have any reconciliation or deal with my mom and I would never reconciliated. I knew I was okay and I was loved by my God. So like those kind of truths was very paramount in my healing.
But I
process.
can imagine to feel like you're not loved in that way by your mother has to be. I mean, that has to stay with you for a long time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's not like an overnight type of thing.
I bet. Did you confront her ever? Did you?
Yeah. So like when I took some breaks off for dating, counselors, and really kind of went full throttle into seeking out healing. And then once I felt really good about all that, yes, I went back and talked to my mom and like, hey, Mom, I'm not asking for anything of you, but I just want you to share. I want to share with you what I experienced and let you know that I already forgive you.
What was her response?
And she was like, wow, like, I'm sorry. And I didn't know. Yeah. Well, I didn't know, but I didn't realize how much it impacted you. Interesting. Because in the past, she's kind of like just brushed it off. Right. But yeah, we had that moment, and there's tears involved and things like that. But
is that when she opened up to you about how she was treated growing up?
Right. That's when she, and again, that wasn't overnight. It was kind of like a slow process of having these heart-to-heart conversations over a period of time, where you learn more and more. Yeah. And our relationship is super healthy now.
So now you do like to go home.
I do like to go home. I was home yesterday, just visiting the folks and things like that. Yep.
That's incredible. So I think that's something you said. It's a key point for anybody going through anything. Is it's a slow process to heal wounds of your childhood, teenage years, 20s, whatever it is. It is not overnight, and there are setbacks when you probably were on a really good, for me, it was like I'd be good for like a week or two, and then something would happen to kind of trigger me and set back. And then it felt like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but there's always 1 step forward then. So in those moments, like your faith obviously helped you. What else helped you? Getting into fitness again?
I would say that the bigger pieces that helped me was a strong sense of faith. My community is huge, and that's kind of like one of the pillars of what I do with fitness is like try to build. So fitness, community, accountability in terms of like, hey Heath, are you addressing this? Are you doing the things to stay healthy? Yeah. Whether it's to talk to somebody, whether that's to write things down, whether it's the community piece, and just applying things that and you've learned over time in order to get your mind right. Right. Are you doing these things? But I would say faith, community, and accountability has been huge. But also a lot of my I channel all my little frustrations or rage or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And fitness has been a big piece of that.
That's your outlet.
My outlet, it's been a healthy outlet at that. There's a lot of unhealthy way to do things out there.
Absolutely, no kidding.
And so, yes, I when I was going through this whole healing process with my mom, it went hand in hand with and getting hurt. I tore my labrum in my shoulder, so I was down and out physically. And so I kind of I built myself back up physically at that time, and kind of stayed the course. And so now I'm like, wait a sec, there's something to this whole physically healthy, emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy thing. Yeah. And so now I'm like, I want everyone around me to be good in all 3 of those as well. So. And
you were completely open and said that you've gone to counseling, you've seen a therapist. How long did you go for? I'm just curious.
So when I was working at the church, as well as before that, they had like a vetted, list of like great Christian-based, faith-based counselors that I could go and see, and I was like, sign me up. And it's been great.
Did you connect with a male or female counselor? Male. You did.
Yeah. So I just due to my experiences, and I've always had a healthy relationship with my dad, especially due to like my experience with my mom. I've always been able to feel more comfortable with men. Yeah. And that's probably always going to be the case. I don't know. Right. And so, yes, I felt more, I felt super open with the guy. The guy was great. Again, my counselor was great. So he was good. He was a guy. So
did anyone know at the time that you were going to see a counselor?
I told some people. People in my small group knew.
Yeah.
And I've since referred tons of counselors out there to certain people. And again, if you get the right guys that are all about being better at life and in life, in all those 3 phases, they'll be open to it. And I'm happy to talk to anybody, any guy that's struggling, privately or publicly, and encourage them to kind of get help in different ways.
Right. Because I think there's this sense of shamefulness or they, their ego, they already feel down here. So it's like, and I'm going to go talk to somebody about how bad I'm really feeling. So they just don't go.
Right. Well, sometimes honestly, I feel like it takes a guy in order to encourage another guy. Sometimes that's how we work, and I'll call them out on their pride. You do? Yeah. Absolutely. Like
life's too short.
Life's too short, man. Get right.
Yeah.
Go talk to somebody about it. I'm here to listen, but if you want some, a professional opinion, go see X.
You continue to kind of struggle with female relationships. You were pretty open with me about that. Yeah. Obviously still a work in progress. How do you go at it differently now than you did 10, 15 years ago in your...
Oh, and so now that I feel like I have like a healthy sense of self-worth, and I know, what I should put up with and not put up with in a relationship, I just have like certain just guardrails when it comes to allowing people in my life. And so if it's not a fit, I'm not going to force it. I'm pretty intentional how I date. Yeah. And I have a desire to be married one day. Yeah. And but I'm just more relaxed and just not really uptight about the whole dating situation. When it works out, it works out. But I'm not allowing anyone in my life that's going to disrupt the health of me, based on what kind of energy they're bringing into a relationship or potential relationship.
Right. I think that's so important because it's like, you don't need to be completed. You are complete the way
Right.
you are.
Right.
You want someone to level up.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm whole. Don't mess up that. Don't mess
right,
it up.
right. That's so important for
Yeah.
men and women to realize, like, hey, you don't need someone else just
Right.
to, you know, you need a good match and a good partner. You're not missing a piece in your puzzle.
Right.
And if you are, then you got to figure that out first before someone's going to come along and, you know, actually be right there by your side. I feel like, and we're both Northerners, so I feel like I can say this, but I feel like the South is a little different when it comes to dating and relationships. Like there's this expectation to have it all figured out by the time you're like 24, 25, 26.
Yeah, I feel like
you
people
see
want to
that?
settle down a lot
Yeah.
sooner here, and it's like a rush.
Yes.
I just want to get it right. I don't care about how fast or how long it takes.
Same.
You know,
Same.
just want to get it right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. So what would you say to someone that's maybe not, you know, in a church and has a faith like you, but a guy that's going through some struggles, whether it be something similar to you or other issues, either depression or bipolar, you know, mental health issues. I like to just say mental wellness.
Right.
How would you encourage them to reach out and start the conversation, and who do you go to, and or what things do you do in your everyday life to really stay mentally well?
I'll start off with the last part you mentioned.
Okay.
So to stay mentally well, I would say that affirmations, writing down truths about yourself that has nothing to do with like your experiences, things like that, you know. Meditation,
Okay.
prayer, but having like a set goal of a daily goal of, okay, say 3 positive things about yourself that you know that are true. That'll be a step that I would say that I encourage any guy to kind of like, you know, write down or jot down or kind of get in a habit of doing. But if they're struggling, I want to know why. I just want to, whether it's, I'll grab coffee.
Yeah.
You know, I want to hear when she knows someone's story a little bit. And of course, I'll lead the way. You know, I'll lead off with sharing my story. It helps to kind of know why someone is the way they are.
Yep.
And just ask questions,
Yeah.
you know, about, you know, who they are, where they come from, their experiences. It sounds like for most people, it comes down to those daddy or mommy issues, right?
Right.
But I feel like I'm a natural encourager. So I just feel like, you know, hey, I might not know this person really well, but, you know, I see the potential pretty quickly in people.
Yeah.
So just kind of like help encourage that person if they have identified like a gap in terms of their mental or spiritual health or even their physical health, like, hey, you could get to this place. Based on experience, here's the ways I've been able to do it myself.
Right. And it's slow.
And it's slow. And if you need more expertise out here, talk to this person, connect with, you know, let's grab lunch, let's grab dinner.
Yeah.
So yeah, either connecting with somebody else or myself. Well, again, I just want to build relationships with people so I can kind of learn more before I kind of like go into like the actionable steps of trying to help somebody.
Right.
You know?
Well, it's like fitness. Like, how do you change someone's body without understanding how it works first?
Right.
So understanding what they went through and why they are the way they are now to help them make these small little changes. And I mean, this happened to you before you were a teenager. So how many years of that habitual thought process of I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy. Like, how do you break that cycle? Well, it's not going to be overnight.
Not going to be overnight.
But you've got to start thinking those positive affirmations consistently. And, you know, yes, there's going to be setbacks, but I love what you said. Like, I don't actually do that. Like writing this kind of, and even like the same 3 things so that those are like forced into your subconscious, right? So they just become fact. I like that. That's a good piece of advice. But also, you know, really understanding that it's habitual.
Yeah.
So you need to be consistent, just like physically.
Right.
You got to keep doing it.
Yeah. Whether it's fitness or whatever, you know, like practice makes perfect in terms of like habitual things you do in order to strengthen your mind as well as your physical body.
And if it takes the rest of your life, then it takes the rest of your life to figure out. And at least you're moving towards positivity versus sitting over here on the negative side or, you know, playing the victim or placing blame. Like, you might as well try to change it if you're not happy with the way something is. Right?
Effort.
I love it. Well, you're inspirational. I'm so glad that you came into my life.
No, you've been great. You're awesome.
Well, I appreciate being vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's going to take to make a lot of these changes. And, if you're not ready to do that yet, that's okay. But just kind of putting that, thought out there in the world and opening up the conversation and using this platform to do so. So I appreciate you being on this episode, and I'm excited to see where your future goes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I've just realized as I get older, you start to, realize kind of the faults in the people you used to really, hold to this, put on this pedestal, I guess, right? And so, one of the things I realized was how much like aggression was a main form of communication in my family. That's not a bad thing. I mean, it can be, it's great to get stuff done.
Yeah.
But a lot of times that's not the most effective way to articulate what you're talking about. It's definitely not a great way to get vulnerable, and there was just so much aggression all the time that I see to myself a lot too, like usually, obviously, when I'm working and stuff, I'm calm, but when like, it sucked to admit to myself that, like my base state a lot of times is, anger or irritation or like, pessimism and stuff like that. So I think it is hard for guys, at least right now, in my experience, to find those types of communities that are, smaller, that where guys do open up, because a lot of times it's like, man, let's just do something else.
Do something else, yeah. Let's not talk about the real stuff.
Let's not talk about exactly. Let's not talk about the real stuff.
Stop crying.
Exactly. Because that's kind of what you're taught, right? Like if you have a problem, scream it out, tough it out, and push it down until, I guess, one day you just die or something. I don't really know what the end goal with that is. But no, it was interesting to hear you talk a little bit about aggression specifically, because in my experience, aggression leads to isolation, and
isolation is bad.
And, I think people nowadays really try to like gas up introverts in a lot of ways, and try to talk about maybe, and I am a very big introvert. I mean, I'm freaking out right now too, just kind of being on the mic for more than 10 minutes. But it's just there are healthy aspects of being introverted, but a lot of times that isolation can just get you into your own head. And I think that's what happens to me a lot of times, where if there's no one there to like pull me out and be like, dude, you're thinking like crazy. People, it's not that people don't like you or like you need somebody else there to just kind of pull you out of that hole. And I think that's something that I've been dealing with. But I wanted to know, did you ever have those experiences where you kind of got into your own head, or you started having these like very irrational thoughts that you knew weren't true, but it didn't matter?
Right. I would say my when I was most unhealthy, it was when I was super isolated on my own, acted on my own with no accountability or people checking on me. Mm-hmm. And I was making some very, very poor decisions in all aspects of my life because I was isolated. And I think by nature that men, we were like kind of like more like lone wolves.
Yeah, there's that weird, like, you idealize that, like, I'm just going to do this myself.
Right.
Right.
Wrong, right, whatever.
As long as you do it alone.
Yeah. And so it was more so like I knew I was like operating in a very poor behavior, but it was pride. Yeah. That I was like, man, I don't even want to let anyone know about what's going on with me right now because it's embarrassing. But then when you get really, really low, it came to a point in my life where I was just like, you know what? It's time. Yeah. I gotta switch some things up. And because I'm in this on my own, the only way I could think of getting out of it is by letting someone know. And that started with like close friends that I mentioned in the podcast, like a Fred and some other close friends of mine that I grew up with, or like, hey man, this is what I'm dealing with. And they didn't judge me. They were like, okay. Tell me more. And then that kind of helps the snowball effect of opening up when you don't feel judged by other men, but as well as like encourage me to talk to other people and so on and so forth. But it's like So if I could be a catalyst for that, for more men talking or sharing, so I could get out of that aggressive state or the isolation state, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Because I recognize it because I've been there before. You understand now how guys are how we're wired. You know, a lot of guys are not going to like the healthy options out there, you know, and so we have to come from a standpoint of experience and, hey, this is what good. This is the good that happened from my experience of these options that I've chosen. I'm just putting it out there. Don't you want to be healthy? Don't you want to be well? Do you want to be on your A game in all aspects of your life? Of course they're going to say yeah. So that's when they're, you know, put in the work, man.
Yeah. And the thing is, you know, a lot of times I liked what you said about kind of getting through it on your own and then thinking about it. Like when you're in the thick of it, you don't really want to share it with people. And I've been guilty of this too, where like when I have a problem, I don't talk about it when I'm going through it, but when I'm done, it's kind of like this ego thing. Like, oh, look at the mountain that I conquered or something.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want people to help me with the climb, even though it probably would be a lot easier that way. It's weird. There's a weird amount of ego with it too. Like,
ego, pride. I think innately, like you're right. Like we don't want help because help from someone other than ourselves is looked usually as failure, and that's just the furthest from the truth. You know.
Exactly.
So, again, it's a reprogramming thing for a lot of us, and if you know, so if I were to get more guys together, and I think we would all admit that we work better when we kind of like all collectively like talk through some things and get help. And but individually we're not gonna like admit that.
We love to conform too. That's
right. Just, so so like again, you know, based on my experience, I've seen so many things out there where I could quickly recognize when a guy's in that isolation, denial, pride like state, and then you ask certain questions. You know, and as long as I know who I am and what I'm about, they usually don't question my, you know, the reason behind me questioning when I ask them questions, and because I'm here to help.
Do you have a criteria where, kind of like a checklist where you make sure that this person is in a certain frame of mind before you help them? Because, you know, a lot of times in my experience, when I have tried to help a few of my friends, and they're just not mentally ready for it, or they don't have the right attitude. You know, we can do anything for them and it just won't happen. Do you approach a situation like that? Or
I have a rough, it's not, you know, I don't have like a written down checklist, but yeah, the checklist is like, okay, are they truly, do they want to get healthy or get better? Or are they still in denial? I'm a firm believer that advice requires permission, right? So I'm not going to bombard them with a whole bunch of questions and, you know, getting all in their mess, right? Unless I have permission to do so. But I will be vulnerable on my own to kind of like help jumpstart a conversation,
right? You
know, and if they don't open up, they don't open up. But you know, like, you know, whether it's me working with students or the adults that I train and coach, when you're vulnerable and when you're relatable, and when you share your story over time, when you build these relationships, at some point, someone's gonna hit you with something where you're like, all right, now they're ready, you know. So, tangible checklist, no, but I just know, you know, just through time and experience and just discernment, like, it's, you know, this person's ready to kind of like improve their life.
I think you've internalized an identity of being a mentor, and I wanted to ask you, what is something that has been unexpected in this entire journey of yours where you've been mentoring, you know, young men and you know, other people as well? What is something that you maybe unexpectedly learned about yourself, or learned about the, you know, idea of isolation or regression or something like that?
Something I've learned about myself, I would say what I'm doing now, like the fact that like people have acknowledged and identified that, Heath, you're pretty good at this whole relational thing with people where you can help them and coach them up to be better human beings. You know, 5 years ago, that was the furthest thing from the truth, right?
What was it like 5 years ago?
I was super unhealthy. I was down in the dumps. I lacked self-worth. I was unhealthy. I never thought I would I would be working at a major church. I would be helping so many people, building communities, being a go-to for people trying to connect me with them to like get them right in certain aspects of their lives. I never thought that would be a reality, and it is now. So I'm just amazed at how far I've come, where I could, pay it forward and trying to, help mentor, whether it's young men through the volunteer work I do now still, as well as the friendships and communities that I've been able to like get going and be healthy and thrive in this Atlanta area just through relationships and just being vulnerable and being real.
If you could time travel back to 5 years ago and somehow, I'm not going to get into the metaphysics of it because it's probably impossible. I don't have a degree in any of that. But if you could go back in time 5 years ago, meet yourself and, not cause the time paradox and give yourself some advice, what are some things that you would tell yourself?
I would tell myself that be encouraged because all this pain, all these experiences are sharpening you and preparing you for something greater. And so just learn and grow and just go through it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of 6 Feet Above. I'm your host, Megan Armstrong. Subscribe so you never miss another episode, and follow me on Instagram at 6 Feet Above Podcast to keep the conversation going. Tune in next week for a brand new episode. This episode is a product of Audiographies, produced by Denor Sepolia, edited by Jacob Smolian, and the music was by Keenan Willis, funded by yours truly. I'll see you next time.